To coast around the world, this is the Wells Report. Greetings. My name is John David Wells. Welcome to the broadcast. Good to have you here. This is another tough day, and I'm hoping that your day is going along well. When I say it's a tough day, there has been some information regarding the Uvalde shooting. The Texas House of Representatives has issued a report, and it's scathing. And it's also heartbreaking. It is a failure of so many things, and we're going to bring that to you. As you know, this has been a very, very difficult story for me to tell. But tell it we will, because that's what we do on the Wells Report. We bring you the news. We bring you analysis for fact. And then what we do is we make commentary. Now, that's opinion. That is not news. It is opinion. Just mine. And from there, we have debate, and that's yours. 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172 will get you through to the Wells Report. You can also chat with us. Please feel free to do so. The chat room is open now. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Twitter and Twitch. And we are waiting for you. So please do join us. The Austin American Statesman, part of the USA Today network and TV station KVUE, has exclusively obtained a copy of the hallway surveillance video of last week's shooting at the Uvalde Elementary School. Families of the victims received the committee report yesterday. This according to the committee chairman, Representative Dustin Burrows. The nearly 80-page report details numerous shortcomings and failures by the Uvalde School District and various law enforcement agencies and offices. The document details a regrettable culture of noncompliance by school personnel in propping doors open and circumventing locks. Staff and students knew room 111 of Robb Elementary was especially unsecured and commonly had trouble with locking. The room investigators believe the shooter likely entered through that door. Law enforcement responders did not adhere to their own active shooter plan and, quote, failed to prioritize saving the lives of innocent victims over their own safety. The Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District established its own police department in 2018 that oversees Uvalde public schools, but the district did not have an officer specifically assigned to Robb Elementary. With 9 different schools and a budget for 6 police officers, Uvalde CISD oversees more campuses than it has officers. In total, 376 law enforcement officers responded to the shooting. The majority of the responders at the school were federal and state law enforcement, according to the report. Authorities included 150 U.S. Border Patrol agents and 91 state police officials. It would follow that there would be so many Border Patrol agents there as kids of Border Patrol families went to that elementary school, Robb Elementary. The report cites a breakdown in communication at the scene and confusion about the leadership among police officers from the Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District, but extends fault to other law enforcement agencies as well. The Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District's written active shooter plan says its police chief, Pete Arredondo, should assume command during an active shooter. Although he was one of the first responders to the shooting, quote, he failed to perform or to transfer to another person the role of incident commander. Unquote. Other police witnesses interviewed by the committee either assumed Arredondo was in charge, or could not tell if anyone was in charge due to the chaos of the scene. Despite an atmosphere of chaos, the ranking officers of other responding agencies did not approach the Uvalde CISD chief of police or anyone perceived to be in command to point out the lack of and need for a command post or to offer that specific assistance. Though the full investigation has not been completed, the preliminary report provides initial details gathered from testimony of families and community members, many of whom have voiced frustrations over conflicting law enforcement descriptions surrounding the shooting. The report gathered information from interviews with 33 witnesses and 39 informal interviews, including administrators with the Texas Department of Public Safety, officers from the Uvalde Police Department, McLaughlin, and Sheriff Ruben Nolasco. This, by the way, this copy from USA Today. Texas Governor Greg Abbott initially praised law enforcement officers for their actions during the shooting and praised their amazing courage by running toward gunfire. He walked back the statement after it was revealed that officers waited more than an hour after the shooter entered the school to storm the classroom. The day after the shooting, an Uvalde police lieutenant who was at the scene was supposed to hold a briefing with state leaders, according to the report, but the officer fainted while waiting in the hallway beforehand. In his place, DPS Regional Director for South Texas, Victor Escalon, held the briefing, but Escalon is not based in Uvalde, did not witness the bulk of the day's events, leaving him to depend on secondhand knowledge. Officials later repeated false information from Escalon that the incident lasted only 40 minutes, thanks to officers that were courageous in keeping the attacker pinned down while children were evacuated. Texas Department of Public Safety Director Steve McCraw called the police response an abject failure that put the lives of officers ahead of the lives of children in a state Senate hearing in June. McCraw blamed the school district's police chief, Arredondo. That was a typo before, so it is Arredondo, not Arando. For the incident Arredondo, the incident commander, for stopping officers from quickly confronting the gunman. More than 100 of the 142 rounds the shooter fired inside the school were shot before officers entered the building. A different report obtained by the Statesman this month, written by Advanced Law Enforcement Rapid Response Training and sought by the Department of Public Safety, found an Uvalde police officer aimed his rifle at the gunman before he entered the school, but waited for his supervisor's permission to fire. The 82-page report says the shooter, Salvador Ramos, 18 years of age, was driven by a desire for notoriety and fame. Relatives described the attacker as shy and quiet. The committee heard testimony that he was reluctant to interact with peers because of a speech impediment. Early school assessment showed he was falling behind academically and was identified as at risk by third grade because of consistently poor test results. He'd only completed ninth grade by age 17. Uvalde High School involuntarily withdrew him in October of 21, citing poor academic performance and lack of attendance. The reporter said the shooter developed a fascination with school shootings. He was active on social media, and most of his usernames and emails referenced themes of confrontation and revenge. According to the report, his frequent comments about school shootings led him to gain the nickname Yabu's School Shooter on the French social networking app. That's Yubo's School Shooter. People in his local group chat also started calling him the School Shooter. He played video games and was taunted by a similar nickname by those he played with. The FBI interviewed his ex-girlfriend, who said he was lonely, depressed, and constantly teased by friends who called him a school shooter. She said he told her repeatedly that he wouldn't live past 18 because he would commit suicide or simply because he wouldn't live long, according to the report. Video obtained by the Statesman and KVUE showed delay law enforcement responses. In the video, officers walked back and forth in the hallway without entering or attempting to enter the classroom where the shooter was. Even after hearing at least 4 shots from the classrooms, 45 minutes after police arrived, officers did not move to enter the room. They rushed into the classroom and killed the gunman an hour and 14 minutes after police arrived on scene. Law enforcement experts who viewed the video for the Statesman, the Austin American-Statesman, called police action disastrous and inexcusable. And so Porter Anderson, who tweeted this, said media on releasing the Uvalde videos, quote, "The agencies in charge of this have misled us. We wouldn't be doing our job if we let these same officials who'd been stonewalling us decide when and where this video got out." The Texas committee pushed for the 77-minute videotape to be released to the public. The Department of Public Safety wanted to release the video as well, saying it would promote transparency without interfering with investigations. Uvalde County District Attorney Christina Mitchell Busby objected to releasing the video and instructed the DPS to keep it confidential as investigations continued. The video that the House committee will make available to families and the public, or did make available to the families and public, did not include footage of the gunman walking into the school or the view from the hallway of the man firing his way in the classroom. The video said the video the statesman obtained includes that footage. The city held off releasing police body cam video at the district attorney's direction, according to McLaughlin. However, the release of the school's district's hallway video, we believe those body cameras provided further necessary context. The audio and video was edited to protect the victims and the families of the shooting. They were given the opportunity to review the video, but the audio was edited out. Family members of the victims in Uvalde received copies of the report Sunday before it was released to the public. It's a joke. They're a joke. They've got no business wearing a badge. None of them do, said Vincent Salazar, the grandfather of 11-year-old victim Layla Salazar, of law enforcement response on Sunday. During the hour-long question and answer session with reporters after the report was released, committee members declined to address policy questions such as whether lawmakers should restrict access to assault-style weapons and who, if anyone, should be held accountable for what the committee found was a catastrophic and systematic breakdown. Burrows, chairman of the special committee, also said that no committee should assume it's safe or immune from violence and death that visited Uvalde on May 24th. I think some of the same systems we found there failed that day are across the entire state and country, said Burrows. Many of the members of the panel, Burrows said, have strong opinions about the changes to policies that need to be done. Look, it's very, very simple. We have to make our schools safe. We have to make our schools safe from maniacs. We simply do. And we don't. And for whatever reason, the idea that you can prop these doors open, waiting for the wolf to come, has got to be quashed. Why would those doors need to be open? How does this happen? It happens because people just get complacent. And I'm talking about not just I'm talking about everybody in this. And once again, you know how terrible I feel about Monday morning quarterbacking, taking hours, weeks, and months to review the decision-making that happens in seconds. But this is the news. This is what we have. And it is tragic. It's heart-shattering. And unfortunately, it's a fact of life for the people and families of Uvalde, Texas. I don't know what's going to happen with the police officers. All I can say is that they'll never, ever forget any of this. I'm sure that this will haunt them for the rest of their lives. I'm sure there's no doubt about it. Nobody wants to get into a situation where someone looks at them and finds their behavior wanting. Unfortunately, that's what these guys are living with right this minute. You are listening to The Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number, 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Back with more coming up in just a couple of moments as we give you the news. We give you analysis for fact. We bring you commentary, and then we bring you debate. We do all of those things and more on this radio broadcast. By the way, if you like this show, make sure you share it with your friends. Please do that. That would be awfully nice. Looking forward to chatting with you and talking with you on The Wells Report. Back in a moment. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. Talking about the release of video from the Uvalde Robb Elementary School shooting. Uvalde officials released the body cam video from 7 Uvalde police officers who responded May 24th to the attack at Robb Elementary School, including one who approached the classroom 3 minutes behind the gunman, only to be pushed back by gunfire that sent him and others scrambling for cover. All is quiet for the first 52 seconds of the footage, identified as belonging to SWAT Commander Eduardo Canales, as he and several other officers cautiously approach the classroom. Watch that door. Watch that door, he warns. 4 loud shots ring out in rapid succession. Canales then left along with the other officers and asked, "Am I bleeding? Am I bleeding?" 2 more shots were then fired in the classroom. Later, the video shows Canales with blood on his hand from a wound to his ear. Then Canales tells just arriving officers after briefly exiting the school, "We've got to get in there. Guys in the classroom right now." That sense of urgency was somehow lost amid the arrival of hundreds of officers from multiple local, state, and federal agencies as more than an hour passed before a U.S. Border Patrol tactical team led the way into the classroom and shot the gunman dead. City officials had held off on making the footage public at the direction of Uvalde County District Attorney Christina Mitchell Busby, but Uvalde Mayor Dan McLaughlin said he believed the Sunday release of the first in-depth investigative report of the shooting, accompanied by the video taken from the hallway outside the classroom, changed the situation. With the release of the school district's hallway video, we believe these body cam videos provide further necessary context, and that is why they were released. McLaughlin said that in a written statement. Families of the school victims were given the opportunity to view the video. They frequently choppy body camera videos depicted a chaotic scene as officers entered the hallway and others encircled the school's multiple buildings with frequent warnings to avoid east-west or east-facing windows in the gunman's line of sight. Some officers have trouble locating the source of the gunfire as urgent radio calls request any available unit, ambulances, and bulletproof shields. Some of the footage shows students, their images blurred so they can't be identified, being rescued through windows in classrooms away from the shootings in room 110, make that 111, and 112. Officers used a collapsible baton to smash a window as another yells into the opening, "Is anybody in there? Police, I want everybody to come to the window right now." As children were carefully helped to avoid the broken glass, they ran to waiting officers in a nearby parking lot. It's okay. Run, said the officer. CNN is reporting 5 key takeaways from the Uvalde shooting. And here they are. Law enforcement shares systemic responsibility. The report found the entirety of law enforcement and its training, preparation, and response shares systemic responsibility for many missed opportunities. According to the report, the police who made entry knew there had been gunfire, evidenced by a cloud of debris in the hallway, bullet holes in the walls, and spent rifle casings on the floor. There was no evidence officers had any contemporaneous understanding as they arrived in the building, that officers, make that children and teachers, just then had been shot inside the classrooms. It would have been more than an hour before officers finally breached the classroom and killed the shooters. Once again, that was a Border Patrol TAC team that did that. According to the committee report, first responders lost critical momentum by treating the situation as a barricaded subject scenario, which calls for a more measured response. Correcting this error should have sparked greater urgency to immediately breach the classroom, by any possible means subdue the attackers, and deliver immediate aid to the victims, according to the report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. The Uvalde shooting is going to haunt all of us. All of us. Probably forever. And God bless these families who lost their children. God bless the officers who have doubtless lost their confidence, possibly forever. This has been the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. You are listening to the Wells Report. Thanks very much for being here today. Find us on chat. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter and Twitch. Feel free to be a part of our broadcast. We are discussing the release of video that showed in stark detail the horror at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. The mother who saved her children during the Texas shooting, the Uvalde, Texas shooting, has a message to police officers who she blames for inaction and holding back other parents. Turn in your badge. Angeli Rose Gomez was placed in handcuffs outside Robb Elementary School on May 24th before hopping a fence and pulling her two sons out of the building herself. She spoke with Fox News. This before a scathing 77-page report was released Sunday, noting systemic failures and egregiously poor decision-making on behalf of law enforcement responding to the active shooter situation. Despite a robust response of at least 376 law enforcement officers, the new report notes a chaotic, uncoordinated scene, stressing how police officials prioritized their own safety over the lives of students and teachers and waited more than an hour to confront Salvador Ramos, who died at age 18. Here's what she said, quote, "Message to cops. Turn in your badge. This isn't the job for you. You aren't willing to protect and serve. If you can't own up to your job, turn in your badge. You let everyone down." All need to turn in their badges. All the cops mistreating us outside need to be punished. If they would have just left, all the parents would have done way more than they would have done. "I don't know where I got that bravery," she said. "I kept thinking that I'm not going to stand here and wait for my kids to die and wait for them to tell me hours later that my kid is dead." Her remarks came in response to last week's release of surveillance and body camera footage showing how officers, heavily armed and equipped with body armor, helmets, and some protective shields, walked back and forth in the hallway as others trained their weapons, or spoke on the phone, or sent text messages, or reviewed floor plans, all while never attempting to enter any classrooms. After the gunman had already opened fire outside the school, prompting several 911 calls from inside and outside the building, surveillance footage showed Ramos walked inside, peered around a corner. As he proceeded towards classrooms 111 and 112, a boy exiting a bathroom noticed the gunman standing by the classroom door and firing a barrage of bullets. The boy ran back into the bathroom as the gunman entered a classroom, and children are heard screaming as the gunfire continues. "Everything has been rough now the video has been released. Feel like we're back at square one with the fact that the cops didn't do anything, like I'd always been saying. This is just horrific," said Gomez. "My one son, who was at recess during the shooting, he's now seeing him, the shooter, in the actual view, seeing who he was, sees him walk around the school, seeing how cops didn't help his friends and how they ran away. It's just unforgiving. I just keep thinking about how my kids were not going to get saved. I'm just so grateful that I could get my sons. Now seeing the video, I know my sons would have been screaming inside, and they, the cops, wouldn't have done anything. Devastating that they didn't do anything." 19 children, 2 adults. That may be a typographical error. I believe it was 17 children and 2 adults, 19 total. I don't know how they just didn't react the way I did with other parents. I don't know how they could. I don't know how they couldn't do anything. Horrible just seeing them stand there. One getting hand sanitizer, the other one on his phone, other officers being held back. The footage also contradicted initial claims by police officials that officers were waiting for equipment. Quote, "It just shows that they'd been lying to us from the start. At first, said they didn't have the right equipment. I just don't understand how they were mistreating us outside, holding us back, tased us. But they didn't do anything like that to the shooter," said Gomez, noting how parents gathered outside. I'm like, what the hell? We had so many parents willing to go in, and they were standing in the hallway hiding. I didn't see any cops crying or getting outraged, no sympathy, no sign of them trying to save the kids. This is what everyone had been saying. Cops didn't do anything, and now there's proof. Some families were mad about the video being released, but we all wanted answers. What happened to you? All wanting to know. Now there's evidence the cops didn't help. Gomez also alleged that she had been harassed by police officers after speaking out after the shooting. And I had cops come and park or they'd follow me. But I didn't know why anyone was upset with me. I just wanted to save my kids. I didn't kill anyone. I'm just devastated. We saw it first before the media, and I'm happy it was released. This is what we needed to know, that they didn't save them. The Sunday report was released by a Texas House of Representatives committee that pointed out that just 2 officers with the Uvalde Police Department arrived at classrooms 111 and 112 minutes after the gunman began opening fire. The gunman fired at officers who were grazed by fragments of bullets and quickly retreated without ever returning fire. One of them exited the building altogether. According to the report, failures expanded beyond just law enforcement, as the committee said a culture of complacency rendered most safeguards meant to deter any intruder useless. Teachers often propped interior and exterior doors open, or doors were left unlocked, partially due to a shortage of keys. We need new leadership. We feel like they've been covering everything up. Too many lies. Everything was a lie from the beginning, said Gomez. Why is the school being opened in a month? We don't even have security at the school yet. The shooter could have done so much more damage. She also expressed frustration with the school district and the city in the aftermath of the shooting. Only one school with an indoor gym, the high school, so our little kids play recess outside, can be shot from the street now? It's just horrific. I don't know how they thought they were going to I don't know how they think we're going to trust them to put our kids back on the bus. City also took down all the stuff at the plaza that memorialized our kids, and the city council said they had asked parents, but they didn't. We wanted that there for people to not forget what happened, and they took it all down. I feel like they're taking everything away, like they just want to get over it. Gomez stressed that many parents and teachers are hesitant to return come the new school year. We have kids in summer school, and recently there was an immigrant speed chase near the school, and the kids had to hide under their desks, and once again, the kids had to endure going under the table again, worrying about a shooting. It's sad to know that things are not ready. Parents are agreeing not to enroll their kids this year, and we have teachers unwilling to go back either. We simply must protect our kids in school. And we don't. The schools today are unsafe, very much like they were then, and they're still unsafe. No one should be able to get into a school with a weapon unless they are authorized to have it. And if they get in the school with a weapon, they should be shot immediately. Immediately. I don't have any idea why that hasn't been the case. She said, turn in your badge. And I have to say that that's not necessarily a bad idea. Meanwhile, in Indiana, another shooting at an Indiana mall. 3 people dead, 2 others injured after a man with a rifle opened fire inside an Indiana shopping mall, and an armed civilian took him out. The man entered the Greenwood Park Mall with a rifle and several magazines of ammunition, began firing in the food court, said Greenwood Police Department Chief Jim Eisen at a news conference. A mall patron who shot the man with a rifle was a 22-year-old man from Bartholomew County. The real hero of the day is the citizen that was lawfully carrying a firearm in that food court and was able to stop the shooter almost as soon as he began. One of the wounded was a 12-year-old girl with a minor injury. She got hit with a bullet fragment in one of her legs. She was treated and released. Other victims ranged in age from their early 20s to 30. All but one was female. The shooting happened at Greenwood Park Mall's food court around the mall's 6 p.m. closing time. The first emergency calls were received at 6:05. The mall, located in Greenwood, was about 10 miles south of Indianapolis. has more than 130 indoor and outdoor restaurants and shops. Greenwood Mayor Mark W. Myers issued a statement Sunday night. This tragedy hits the core of our community. Please offer your prayers to the victims and our first responders. We are sickened by yet another type of incident in our country, according to Indianapolis Assistant Chief of Police Chris Bailey. Chris Roy, the assistant manager of the mall's Van Shoe Store, was working Sunday when he saw people running through the hallway away from the food court just before closing. I jumped over the counter, locked the door, gathered my associates and other managers at the back door. We just instructed everybody to keep quiet. Authorities said they would provide more details as the situation continues. That was USA Today's rendition of it. Here is CNN's report. A gunman killed 3 people at an Indiana mall before he was shot dead by an armed bystander. A shooting rampage that killed 3 people and injured 2 others at an Indiana mall ended after an armed witness shot and killed the assailant. Around 6 p.m. local time, multiple people called 911 to report an active shooter at the Greenwood Park Mall. Investigators believe the unidentified gunman, an adult man, was shot and killed by a lawfully armed 22-year-old man who observed the shooting in progress. Those injured or killed included 1 male and 4 females, including the 12-year-old girl whose parents brought her to a hospital with minor injuries. The second injured victim was hospitalized and in stable condition Sunday evening. This has shaken us to our core. It's something that we haven't seen in Greenwood before. It's absolutely horrendous, and our thoughts and prayers are with those loved ones hurting tonight. The Greenwood Police Department has trained for a mass shooting scenario, performed multiple mall exercises to prepare for active shooter situations. But I'm going to tell you, the real hero of the day is the citizen that was lawfully carrying a firearm in that food court, was able to stop this shooter almost as soon as he began. It's rare to have an armed bystander attack on an active shooter, according to data analysis published by the New York Times. There were at least 433 active shooter attacks in the U.S. from 2000 to 2021, according to data analysis. Active shooter attacks were defined as those in which one or more shooters killed or attempted to kill multiple unrelated people in a populated place. Of those 433 active shooter cases, an armed bystander shot the attacker in 22 of those incidents. In 10 of those, the good guy was a security guard or an off-duty police officer. Having more than one armed person at the scene who was not a member of law enforcement can create confusion and carry dire risks, according to the report. For example, an armed bystander who shot and killed an attacker in 2021 in Arvada, Colorado, was himself shot and killed by police officers who mistook him for one of the gunmen. In the Greenwood Mall shooting, the gunman apparently used a long gun rifle, according to Eisen, though law enforcement has not immediately recovered any weapons from the scene. Olivia Harding said that she was at the Old Navy in the mall when she and her mom heard 4 gunshots and thought the nearby carousel was breaking down. Next thing you know, you hear 6 more shots and you see everybody running. Harding said that she doesn't think she's going to go back to the mall for a very long time. There have been 350 mass shootings this year, according to the Gun Violence Archives. Like CNN, the archive defines a mass shooting as one in which 4 or more people are shot, not including the shooter. The community now joins a slew of others grappling with the aftermath of mass shootings, including communities reeling from massacres at the elementary school in Uvalde, Texas, and a July 4th parade in Highland Park, Illinois. SWAT teams cleared the mall and determined there were no additional threats in the building. Police are still investigating the shooter's motive and questioning people who were inside the mall at the time. During a press conference today, which I had spent some time watching, from what I understand, the armed citizen made some very good pistol shots. He was far away from the shooter. He opened fire, closed to the shooter, continuing to fire, and put the guy down. He had, from what they understood at this press conference, he had no military or no police training, but obviously he had training of some kind. Probably that training that he provided for himself. When we come back on the Wells Report, I'll run through some of the things that I think you should know about carrying a weapon. I think that we should all of us who have either licenses to carry or live in a constitutional carry state, need to start thinking about the realities of what that responsibility means. We'll talk about that as we continue here on the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report for Monday, July 18th, 2022. I am John David Wells. I want to thank you very much for watching. We are waiting for your text, waiting for your call at 817-379-2172. That's 817-379-2172. Call us anytime you feel like joining us. I want to thank Yvonne, and I want to thank Ann, and I want to thank Gail. I want to thank all the people there already, including Kathleen. Back in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. I am John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. If you are someone like me who routinely carries a weapon, there is something you must do. First of all, you must carry your weapon. Second of all, before you carry your weapon in public, make sure you have a few things understood. You are taking part in a just society. It is not just the police, because when seconds count, police are minutes away. When seconds count, police are minutes away. You have to remember that your part, when you carry that weapon, that's a responsibility to defend yourself and your family, but also other people whom you could reasonably assume would be willing to defend themselves and their families. That's thing number one. Thing number two, you have to train. You have to train like your life depended on it, because your life depends on it. There are classes everywhere. Tactical pistol classes, tactical rifle classes. There are classes everywhere. Take them. Go out to your local range and practice them. Third, it's incredibly dangerous. When you take a weapon out of your holster and you use it to end one of these events, the police can mistake you for one of the shooters. You have to make sure that you cover yourself. What have I done? Well, what I've done is I have procured a badge that I never take out of my pocket. I've taken it out of my pocket once. I've carried this particular badge for over 20 years. And I've taken it out of my pocket once. And I took it out of my pocket once to show a police officer when I went to the State Fair of Texas. Because at the State Fair of Texas, they had a special entrance and exit for people carrying weapons. I showed him my CHL, that's concealed handgun license. It's now an LTC, or license to carry. And he said, "Glad you're here. Go ahead." Why do I carry it? Is it because I want to feel like a big man on campus? No. The reason I want to carry it is so that people realize that I'm not a bad guy. Because they're not going to be able to tell the Rams from the U's during a shooting situation. So if you do shoot, part of your training is going to be this question: what do I do if I clear leather, which is a slang term for drawing your pistol, end one of these events? What do I do next? Well, after you make sure that you're safe, and after you make sure that there's not more than one shooter, holster your weapon and keep your hands in plain sight. When the shooting happens, police are going to be there in a few minutes, 1 or 2. If you act, you're going to have to act. And then what you're going to have to do is then you're going to have to disarm yourself. Put your pistol in your holster. Keep your hands clear. Holding your hands up isn't a bad idea, just like I'm doing now if you're watching on video. Now, you got to be careful carrying a badge, because there can be laws that make you appear to be trying to impersonate a police officer. My badge clearly designates that I am a concealed weapons holder. It has my concealed weapons holder number on it. And I never, ever take it out and show it. Well, I have shown it to some people who I have talked to about carrying a weapon. But the only official time I ever carried it, ever took it out of my pocket, was when a police officer needed to see it, because I was going to the State Fair of Texas. I suggest that you find some way to identify yourself as not an active shooter. By the way, somebody just asked me, where do you find those badges? You can find them at ePolice Supply. That's where I got mine. ePolice Supply. They're expensive, but I keep it with me whenever I'm armed. But these are the things that you need to keep in mind. It's not just carrying a weapon. It's carrying a weapon for a reason. It is a tool. It is something that you need to be willing to accept the responsibility for doing. And that includes training yourself and practicing. Because this is a perishable skill set. This is a perishable skill set. You need to practice at least once a month. I've come up with all kinds of different ways to practice. because you have to check the background. See, because the bullet that you fire can either miss or go through someone. If someone's standing behind them, that's on you. We practiced classroom shootings by taking 2x4s and putting a row of blue balloons and a row of another row of blue balloons with a red balloon and so on and so forth, and trying to make that shot on the red balloon without hitting any of the blue balloons. That's the kind of skill you have to develop. It's not easy. Be responsible, do the right thing, but be careful. This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more coming up in just a couple of minutes. Thanks again for being with us today. Thanks for joining us on the Wells Report. Back in a moment. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. What do we do here that's different from any other podcast that you probably see under the circumstances that you're seeing? Well, we bring you the news, the real news. We analyze that news for fact. I draw distinctions between fact and news. I also point out bias. Then I make commentary. That is not the news. I differentiate between news reporting and that commentary. The commentary has a check and balance. That's debate. My opinion is just as valuable as yours. And by the way, your opinion is valuable. We have a chat room so that you can indeed jump all over that. Let's see. So we were talking about the shootings that happened last hour. If you missed that podcast, make sure you go back and get it. That's hour number 1. We do 3 of these every day, Monday through Friday. So let me go back to some of these chats. The school should have the same armed guards as politicians and Hollywood jerks. That's for man. Yvonne says at the very least they should be allowing armed teachers per Texas law that allows for it. I agree. Again, it's about the gunman. Let's hear about more about the good guy with a gun saving everyone else. True. It's amazing that Indiana shooting, how many people covered it and how many people didn't. And I do have to point out that CNN did cover the story fairly, without bias. Let's see. Someone said their preacher said that any day over 110 should be a Texas snow day. I can get behind that one. As a matter of fact, the temperatures are too hot. It's way too hot out there. How hot is it outside, you might ask? Here in Texas, we have cicadas. They look like gigantic houseflies with great big wings, and they're kind of short and stubby and so on. And I was looking at my holly bushes, which we have out front. It is so hot out there that I found a cicada hiding in the shade underneath one of the leaves of my holly bushes. He was hot. And so I said, hi. And so I, left him alone because he's trying to stay as cool as possible. Yeah, they are scary, by the way, in case you're wondering. By the way, Yvonne also pointed something out that I did not bring up. If you carry a weapon, make sure you carry insurance. Texas Law Shield is the name of the Texas company that does most of our insurance coverages. Make sure you have that coverage. And once again, please, by all means, make sure you train. Please do. So I knew this was going to happen, and I am shocked it took this long because President Joe Biden has been in office now for almost 2 years. What is happening is the Washington Post, a newspaper that absolutely did their dead level best to destroy President Trump day in and day out, day in and day out. A columnist on that newspaper is now calling on the media to cover President Biden more positively, because relentless negative coverage is toxic. Really? Really? Washington Post columnist Perry Bacon Jr. called on the media to cover President Biden more positively. He did that today and contended that relentless negative coverage is toxic for politicians. It's toxic for everyone, especially when it's biased, Washington Post. Biased against President Trump and now biased toward President Biden. Bacon Jr. wrote the mainstream media contributed to a lot of the president's declining support. Oh, you think so? You know, the president has lower support ratings than President Trump had. And President Trump suffered through 95% of mainstream media negative coverage for his entire presidency and still suffers it today. Its flawed coverage model of politics and government is bad for more than just Biden. It results in a distorted national discourse that weakens our democracy. No, what it does is it actually weakens our democracy, which is different. Democracy and democracy, two different things. People have noted over the years that I refer to the Democrat Party as the Democrat Party, not the Democratic Party. If you use the term Democratic Party, you would have to use the term Republicanic party, the Republicanic Party. No, it's the Democrat Party. And that's why I do that. I do that to differentiate between democracy and democracy. A lot of these Democrats are saying this is bad for the democracy. No, it's bad for democracy. And that's something completely different. He said the president's sharpest dip in approval was in August of 2021 after the withdrawal from Afghanistan. He said the media, 24/7 highly negative coverage of the withdrawal caused his approval rating to go down. To be clear, President Biden deserved criticism, the Washington Post columnist said. He argued that the Afghanistan withdrawal dominated newspapers and outlets as if it was, quote, the only thing happening in the world, unquote. Well, I could notice and could point out that whenever something spectacular like the Abraham Accords were reported or were accomplished by President Trump, what ended up happening was this same mainstream media, led by the Washington Post, found other things to cover, completely ignoring the president's achievements. The Abraham Accords were historic, and yet the Washington Post found other things to report. You can still see it to this day. Inflation is through the roof. President Biden is making unbelievable mistakes, one after another, after another, after another. One of the things I want to discuss is, okay, if you don't report negative things about President Biden, what do you report? There's not much there to work with. That's just an opinion. Biden coverage shifted this direction because of the media's long-standing biases toward both sidesism and strong criticism of those in power. He said inflation became the issue that media outlets could ding the president on. Inflation rose 9.1% in June from last year, reaching a fresh 40-year high. Yeah, that's news because it costs the average family $3,400 every single year, the 9.1% inflation. And it's going to go higher. The president said the June inflation numbers were out of date. No, sir, they are not. Biden's arc shows what happens if this broad tenor turns against a politician. There seems to be a generalized frustration with him as opposed to unhappiness over a single issue or two, even among people who don't closely follow traditional news outlets or are generally supportive of his views. Well, that's because they're paying close to $4.50 a gallon for gas. Now, I will note, the gasoline prices are down. They are down. I've seen gas as low as $3.79 a gallon. The only problem with that is that's still way too high. Still way too high, but that has happened. Strangely, there has been no media coverage of it. It is something that is anecdotal. Mr. Bacon also argued it was very hard for Biden to demonstrate his capabilities while newspapers and other media outlets were constantly seeking out something negative. Again, how do you report anything else? Now, I did report the president, I thought, did a wonderful job in the Middle East. He said the right things. There were a couple of different things that I am writing off to gotcha journalism, like the fist bump with the Saudi prince. Now, the thing about that is this. It wasn't the fist bump that bugged me. Fist bumping is usually a friendly gesture. Just boom. That's what bugged me. A firm handshake, a steely look into the eyes of the crown prince, and the word Khashoggi would have been what I would have said. Probably with a smile on my face for the cameras. And he would have, and I wouldn't let go of his hand until he acknowledged it. That's what I would have done. But as the president of the United States, fist bumping somebody that you said was a pariah, that was a mistake. Now, I'm writing that off to gotcha journalism. Okay, so there are parts of this, and a lot of people panned the president's work in the Middle East. He did the right thing at the right time for the right reason. He did get pushback from the acting Israeli prime minister when he said that he wanted to do something about Iran and the nuclear weapons that Iran is developing. But then the president said, we will not allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. And if they have one, they won't have it for long. He didn't say that. That was something I added. If the Iranians do develop a nuclear weapon, they won't have it for long. Outlets like the New York Times, getting back to Mr. Bacon's, I guess, plea for less true coverage. Outlets such as the New York Times, CNN, NBC, and more have recently reported on turmoil within the White House. Backlash aimed at the president from members of his own party looking ahead to 2024, and the White House messaging challenges in the face of skyrocketing inflation and high gas prices. By the way, Bacon Jr. also said negative media coverage contributes to warped polling. Yes, I'm calling out the media to cover Biden more positively, not in the sense of declaring Biden a better man than Trump, although that is obviously true, he says in a parenthetical phrase. The author said the media outlet should be comparing Democrat solutions to Republican solutions with regard to certain issues, but also said the Americans were not getting a fair look when it comes to Biden's abilities. The media has focused on showing that it's not too biased toward Democrats. First, the mainstream media is biased toward Democrats. The Washington Post is the prime cheerleader for all of that, and he knows it. And if he doesn't know it, why is he writing a column on this newspaper? This president has had orders of magnitude more positive press than Donald Trump ever did. Ever. And to think that a simple plea to cover the president more positively has any kind of merit whatsoever ignores the facts. The president's sharpest dip approval was in August of 2021 after the withdrawal from Afghanistan. He said the media's 24/7 highly negative coverage of the withdrawal caused his approval to go down. Well, that's what happens when you take the military out before you get the rest of Americans out. It wasn't the coverage. It was the action. The action taken by the president drew the approval rating down, not the coverage of it. And that's the big flaw in this column, in my view. Biden coverage shifted in this direction because of the media's longstanding biases towards both sidesism. By the way, they did an interesting survey that most Americans want to see both sides. Most so-called journalists don't believe that's necessary. I'll have that for you coming up in just a couple of moments. So, the President of the United States is someone who has created the worst inflation in over 4 decades. And the simple case of the matter is it's not negative coverage of that inflation that is the problem. It is the fact that people are paying way too much for everything. Back with more in a moment. This is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Thanks for being here today. Just got a text from Lois who said, quit saying it's just an opinion when it's obviously an apparent fact. Well, I'm not going to criticize the mainstream media for throwing their opinion out as news and then make an opinion and say a statement that I believe as opposed to news, especially when I'm doing news. I'm not going to not differentiate between my news and my opinion. Okay? I appreciate it, Lois. That's very nice. But just because everybody in the world thinks it's right, that doesn't mean that you can't or shouldn't differentiate between your news and opinion. By the way, I've had program directors say the same thing. I'm sorry. I'm covering the news. What I think about it is different than the news. MSNBC host Katie Tur, Tur, has written a memoir. And in that memoir, she asks whether she's doing more harm than good as a journalist. Why? Because trust in the media is at an all-time low. Last year, Pew Research reported last year, trust in the media was 16%. This year, it's 11%. 11%. I doubt very sincerely that you would be here if it wasn't for the fact that the news is so terrible. In an interview promoting her memoir, Tur was asked by The Hill's Neil Strange about admitting that she almost walked away from journalism altogether during the COVID-19 pandemic, which was another mess, was an absolute mess. So busy trying to turn everybody away from anything that Donald Trump did regarding the COVID-19 epidemic. Every single day, there was a death toll count. Somebody was talking about how many people had died during the COVID pandemic under President Trump's watch. Well, more people have died since then. And you still don't get that death countdown, do you? It's something I don't have a concrete answer to. And that's not because I don't love journalism. I do. It's just convergence of two issues. One of them being that we cover very dark stuff in succession. It seems like it's getting darker and darker, and it can be hard for your mental health. It can be demoralizing. On top of that, there was just a Gallup poll out today that shows that trust in media, newspaper and television, has hit an all-time low. She's correct. 16% of Americans said they had a great deal or quite a lot of confidence in newspapers in 2022. That was a 5% drop. It was the lowest number to give those answers since Gallup starting asking the question in 1973. Television news has Americans more concerned in 2022. 11% told Gallup they have quite a lot or a great deal of confidence in the industry. That figure is down from the 16% who were confident in TV last year, and that was an all-time low. Katie Tur says this: people don't trust us. They don't believe us. It makes me wonder if this job as I'm currently doing it is effective, but if it's doing more harm than good. I don't have a good answer for that, though I think those thoughts linger in the back of my mind. They linger, though people I do love it, and they linger, though, because I do love it, and I think it's important. I'm hoping to find a better way to communicate with people. Here's how you do it. You tell them the truth. You tell them the truth. You separate your opinion from the news. You stop reporting a political agenda. And you stop reporting why it's so good or why it's so bad. What you do is you report the facts as they lay upon the table. By the way, that statistic I talked about earlier, 55% of journalists surveyed, they say that every side does not always deserve equal coverage in the news. What do the people say? 76% of Americans believe journalists should always strive to give all sides equal coverage. The people are telling the news what to do. I wish they would listen to it, don't you? You are listening to The Wells Report. Thanks very much for being here. Back with more coming up in just a couple of moments. You are listening to the Wells Report. I am John David Wells. Thanks very much for being with us today. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. You can call us. Operator is standing by. That would be me. By the way, this is a busy little shop in here. I don't know that you're aware of that or not. But as I bring you the news, I am also switching the television show from camera to camera, usually for effect. And I'm doing that and keeping everything in my head and trying to make sure that the shots are right. And because my television buddies, they call me on the telephone probably 2 or 3 times a week and laugh at the television that I'm attempting to do here. So just one of those things. You just got to deal with it as you deal with it. It's Monday. It's the 18th day of July, year of our Lord 2022. Let me give you an example of negative coverage. This is why people do not trust mainstream media news. This from CNN. Let me double check to make sure that this isn't an op-ed. Okay, it's analysis by Stephen Collinson, which means it's an op-ed, okay? But this is why people don't have trust in American media. Trumpism is on trial this week. Trumpism? Steve Bannon, a founding father of Donald Trump's wrecking ball anti-elite movement, has his day in court starting Monday, today, on charges of contempt of Congress after he snubbed the House committee investigating January 6, 2021. In that, by the way, he followed in the footsteps of Eric Holder, which never had to go through any of this. He was the Attorney General under President Obama. There's a reason I'm giving you this. The ex-president's dereliction of duty that fateful day, meanwhile, will be under minute-by-minute scrutiny in a primetime hearing that apparently is going to happen Thursday, focusing on how he did nothing as the violent mob he incited invaded the U.S. Capitol. This is where you have to stop for a moment. There are a couple of things in that paragraph that you need to be aware of. First of all, it is pathologically stupid that Stephen Collinson, who wrote this piece, would bring up the words dereliction of duty. Dereliction of duty befell Hillary Clinton, a little thing called Benghazi, and that, by the way, also splashed on the commander-in-chief at the time. That was President Obama. That was dereliction of duty. Now, is that my assessment of it? No. No, that is the military, highly ranked military officials who talked with me on Deep Background. That is what they called it, because that is what it is, and that's what it was. So bringing up dereliction of duty is a mistake. The next thing he says here is how President Trump did nothing as the violent mob he incited invaded the U.S. Capitol. This is the same CNN that was decrying the fact that President Trump, by golly gosh, just tried to take control of the Secret Service vehicle he was in to get over to the Capitol. He actually demanded to go to the Capitol, and the Secret Service said no. You can't have it both ways. The president went back to the White House and was under security watch and so on, like all presidents would be under those circumstances, like all the members of Congress that were in the Capitol were under, just like everybody that was there was doing. Everyone was under close scrutiny, but there for 187 minutes. So you got to decide what you're going to report. You have to know what the left hand has to know what the lefter hand is doing. Those 2 moments of public accounting will exemplify the committee's success in ensuring that President Trump's lifelong aura of impunity does not prevent the emergence of what really happened during the worst attack on the American democracy in modern times. First of all, it is not an attack on American democracy. It was actually American democracy in action. That's what that looks like. No, it was the worst attack on American democracy, which is something completely different. And yes, that was the worst attack on American democracy in modern times. But they also come as Trump forces, now listen to this bias. They also come as Trump's forces are gathering for a new attack on truth as they seek to launch the ex-president on a path back to power that could portend even more authoritarian upheaval than his previous term. Excuse me? How many executive orders did President Biden write, say, for example, since he's been in office? How many laws has he tried to concoct from the Oval Room at the White House? By the way, House Republicans, and listen to this, House Republicans eyeing the majority in November's midterms are already drawing up plans to investigate and intimidate key members of the January 6th panel and hold hearings designed to sow falsehoods about Trump's true responsibility for the event on that day. This preview of how a GOP House majority would act as a weapon for the ex-president comes as pro-Trump candidates in states like Arizona and Pennsylvania seek to weaken Democrat guardrails in the state and localities ahead of the 2022 midterm elections. Well, that's what happens when you don't run things. People make law when you try to, shall we say, play fast and loose with elections, or at least appear to. Then he brings up the twice impeached ex-president who tried to steal the 2020 election and launched a coup attempt when it did not go his way. Once again, this is a real bad thing. Remember, we had the chief of the FBI, one of his deputies. We had someone else involved in the Department of Homeland Security, all concocting a way to wear a wire into the Oval Room of the White House to get testimony on President Trump. How would that testimony be used? Well, we've seen it. The January 6th committee refuses to show anything exculpatory from a standpoint of good things that happened on January 6th. They didn't bother asking President Trump anything. They are trying to get people who are in the sabotage business of President Trump's presidency, who are Republicans, to go and testify in public. The smart ones aren't testifying in public. The smart ones are testifying on videotape or video, which is then edited for all the juicy parts that make President Trump look bad. In other words, if you're going to do that, I don't have any problem doing that. But do it in the light of day. Do it in the light of day, and don't edit everything. That is something that has to happen. This is why the mainstream media has an 11% approval rating. You have to show both sides of the story. The confluence of events underscores how extremist political forces that rocked the United States during Trump's term are not extinguished even as shocking details emerge of his behavior when the democracy was on the brink. Once again, democracy was never on the brink. It's democracy that's on the brink, and it still is. So this is basically a screed talking about how President Trump is trying to remake history. No, what he's trying to do is remake warped, biased attempts at history. Now, the problem is this. If indeed, the Republicans take command of the House, they're going to go right after President Biden. They're going to go right after President Biden, powered by the Hunter Biden laptop, powered by stories that the Biden family has been profiting on the work of Joe Biden as a senator, as a vice president, and as the president. They're going to impeach him. They don't have any choice, because those are high crimes and misdemeanors. There are ethics problems all throughout the Democrat Party. I'm going to be reporting on another one here in just a little bit. Serious ethics issues. Maybe even criminal ones. So those are high crimes and misdemeanors, as opposed to simply pursuing politics that you don't like and calling them high crimes and misdemeanors. But I'm going to tell you this. You know, you can negatively campaign, and people have done it. People have had success doing it. But people have also lost their jobs doing it. Because sooner or later, people realize, wait a minute, whoa. This isn't an investigation, it's a lynch mob. President Trump is very likely going to run for his second term in 2024. If he wins, it's going to be garbage like this that makes it happen. It's going to be the January 6th committee. Their plain, biased attempt to do what they're trying to accuse President Trump of doing, which is whitewash history. That's what's going to push him over the top. The people of the United States had a better life under President Trump, even during the COVID pandemic. Fewer people died during his term than President Biden's term. The politicization of the CDC, the FBI, all of that is all going to come home to roost on the Democrat Party, and it should. The Democrat Party has turned itself into a political machine, up to and including law enforcement, the nation's intelligence, the nation's protective agency, the Department of Homeland Security, and the mainstream media, all coming together in this cabal that is nothing short of the most disgusting political machine anybody has ever seen. This makes Chicago's political machine look a lot like a kindergarten class. And it's because both sides are involved in it. Both sides are trying to destroy President Trump. Why? Because President Trump represents something non-political in the highest office in the land. And all these sweetheart deals that take people that are making a nice living and then turn them into millionaires in a couple of years in the Congress are going to come to an end. Further, they've called the clans down on themselves. We now know what the Republican Party has. They've given the Republican Party a playbook. You're going to hear campaigning the likes of which you have never, ever heard before against anything having to do with the Republican Party, because that's the only way they're going to save themselves. COVID-19 was the biggest health emergency that I've ever seen in the United States of America. And what did it turn into? It turned into a way to bail California out of $100 billion worth of debt and all these other liberal states and cities that were sinking financially. That's where that $1.9 trillion went. And they're still trying to pour more money into it. Well, this is very much like hit the panic button. They pulled out every stop to defeat President Trump in 2020, and they pulled it off. But here's the bad thing. In doing so, here we have somebody from the Washington Post saying you've got to stop putting negative coverage out on Joe Biden. No, you don't. That's the way you do it. That's what Americans expect. They expect presidents to be sundered now. This January 6th committee, these two impeachments. Joe Biden, if the Republicans come to power, Joe Biden is going to be impeached and removed from office because it's basically a turnabout. The Democrats don't want Joe Biden to run either. And so now what we have is we have the party of the president, both for President Trump and now President Biden, arguing for his dismissal. And it's all because politics has become this horrifyingly terrible mess that has nothing to do with the people of the United States. It has only to do with what can be done to use the people of the United States for their own political dreams. In the case of the left, pure delirium. All of these things are going to continue to haunt this country until we, the people of the United States, do something about it. What should we do? I'll tell you. What we should do is we should stop electing these people, send them home, get them out of power. as quickly as we possibly can. I'm not asking for Democrats to vote for Republicans. I'm asking for Democrats to vote for different Democrats. I'm asking for the Democrat Party to get rid of the progressive wing of their party and let them become American socialists, which is what they actually are. The Democrat Party has to fix itself, or the people of the United States will fix them for them. And that's going to happen in the 2022 elections. That's the way I see it. That's my opinion. What's yours? 817-379-2172. Back with more of the Wells Report in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. Thanks for being here with us today. We're discussing the use of the media and the use of politics as a political machine. I put forward the idea that if President Trump gets elected in 2024, it's going to be because of the January 6th committee. They're going to have nobody to blame but themselves. And they could have done something much better, which was to actually commit to the truth. To commit to the truth, and that means both sides. It is so instructive. That poll from Pew Research that talked about how journalists, 55% of journalists don't believe it's necessary to report both sides of any story. while 77% of Americans think it is. You want to know why your approval ratings are at 11%? Now you know. Now you know. There's also another piece of this political machine that I'm discussing. Once again, has fallen prey to the idea that it's okay to legislate through courtrooms. That's why Supreme Court elections, state Supreme Court elections, no less, long an afterthought compared with splashier races at the top of the ticket, are facing a brighter political spotlight in the post-Roe decision world. This from Rick Ruan from USA Today. Voters in 32 states will cast ballots this year for about a quarter of the nation's elected state Supreme Court seats. State Supreme Courts are something of the hidden giant of American politics. This according to David Niven, a political science professor at the University of Cincinnati. They have absolutely enormous effects on policy outcomes, and yet they're given almost no thought by the average voter. That's going to change, and that's good. As I said, the new Roe decision will send ripples throughout America. And you're seeing that process now, and this is a reflection of it. Candidates for those seats traditionally struggle to distinguish themselves for voters, taking care to avoid campaigning that might later introduce a conflict of interest on a case before the court. Turnout often suffers from runoff, where voters make selections in other races but skip the lesser-known down-ballot judicial elections. That's not going to happen this time. In 2022, state courts are getting more attention as they deliver key decisions on issues ranging from redistricting to abortion access. It's mostly abortion access because state courts have no business involving themselves in the political meanderings of redistricting. And the reason that that's a problem, that the courts interfere with that, is because the party in power, regardless of which one it is, in the year of the United States Census, which are the even decades, you know, the 10, 20, 30, 40, et cetera, the decades, you need to be in power during those years because you get to draw the districts for the congressional districts as well as the state districts. That means what that is a check and balance against just a party doing whatever it is they want. I know you're sitting there going, well, wait a minute. If you're talking about gerrymandering, how is that a political party not doing what they want? Well, the political party that draws the districts draws them to their advantage. The other party needs to overwhelm the party in power to be able to make those decisions themselves. What does that do? That forces the political parties to come up with policies that people actually want to vote for, as opposed to simply pushing themselves into whatever shape they have to be able to, and whatever electioneering they have to do to win. In other words, you have to get people to vote for you. When the courts interfere with all that, we have a less fair political process. We have a process that tends to focus on itself instead of focusing on the people. That's what I mean by the court should be out of redistricting. On the other hand, abortion access, that's going to be huge. That is going to be huge. The courts will have a say in that, and they should. Because that's a political aspect. That is a lawmaking political aspect. There will be mistakes made. There will be laws that should not be passed, and there will be court decisions that should not be made. This is true. But this is the great turbulence that is going through our culture right now because of the post-Roe v. Wade decision, the new Roe v. Wade decision. The good news is that it's happening state to state. That is a good thing because people have more access to state courts than they do federal ones. And remember, the federal justices, the federal judges, are appointed by the political party in power in most cases. You saw President Trump use that to amazing effect. And Joe Biden is trying to follow in his footsteps. Progressives say he's not moving fast enough. I don't think he's going to get a lot of support for his federal judiciary nominees. And by the way, if the federal judiciary continues to be a political organization, then they should be elected, not appointed. We'll talk about that another day. This is the Wells Report. Thanks for being with us. Back with more in just a moment. Hey guys, thanks for being here today. I really, really appreciate it. I can hardly wait to get back to work. We got one more hour next. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Good afternoon. I am John David Wells. This is the third podcast we've done today. There are two others. Make sure you like this page, like this podcast. And oh, by the way, make sure you share it with your friends. Only if you think it's worth it. Only if you think it's worth it. I think it's worth it. Why? Because we report the news, the real news. We analyze the news for fact. We draw distinctions between the facts and the news, a gulf that gets wider seemingly every single day. From there, I make commentary. That's just my opinion, just as valuable or not valuable as yours. And then we have debate, and debate is where you can comment on the commentary. Whether you agree or disagree is immaterial. All you need to do is know the phone number, 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. We start this hour of the Wells Report with this announcement. I have a new granddaughter. My first granddaughter, in fact, because my part of the family, we make boys. That's what we do. Josie Ray Wells was born this morning. She was 6 pounds, 13 ounces. She was 20 inches long. She is as sweet as can possibly be. And I am a very, very happy grandfather. I can hardly wait to meet her. I can. Mom, and Dad, and baby are all doing well. Mom is doing well. Baby's doing well. Dad is, he's holding his daughter. And I've got a picture of that, and it's gorgeous. But I wanted to let you know that we got a grandbaby. That's number 3. Got 3 grandchildren. I can hardly wait for them to grow up in the nation we grew up in, except better, not worse. That's why I do this show. I'm trying to do my part. Whether you agree or disagree, that's not the point. But do understand this. Your opinion makes this show better, whether it agrees with mine or not. Please share it. You can also, you can call us at 817-379-2172. You can also chat with us. We've got a vibrant chat room going on right now, and we can hardly wait for you to take part in it. There was a little bit of what I consider to be, just my opinion now, inexcusable insider trading on the part of Nancy Pelosi's husband. Paul Pelosi made a $1 million purchase of stock in a semiconductor company just as Congress is getting ready to vote on a $52 billion subsidy to the industry as part of a bill to increase U.S. manufacturing of computer chips to make the country less reliant and more competitive with China. Now, what's really interesting about all this is the fact that Nancy Pelosi is saying that she has nothing to do with this because, and this is the statement from Nancy Pelosi, her office has responded, quote, "The Speaker does not own any stocks. The Speaker does not own any stocks. As you can see from the required disclosures, and which the Speaker fully cooperates, these transactions are marked SP for spouse. The Speaker has no prior knowledge or subsequent involvement in any transactions." And that's fine. And I'm sure that's probably even true. Except for one thing. The business of the House of Representatives is fully discussed at all times between Nancy Pelosi and her husband, Paul. Paul's not stupid. He can read the tea leaves. And with a Democrat House and a Democrat Senate and a Democrat president and the need for America to take care of its own semiconductor manufacturer, that's not a stupid investment. But you've always wondered why it was that Nancy Pelosi could stand in her palatial home, it's a mansion, in a completely commercial, perfectly set up kitchen near as I can tell, eating $25 per pint ice cream if she doesn't have anything to do with what's been going on with Paul's stock trades? This is not the first time this has happened. And so this very carefully worded statement makes sure that you know that Paul Pelosi was making all of these investments, not Nancy. Oh, really? And that's because you don't want politicians to be the ultimate insider when it comes to trading stocks based on the business of the United States government. Well, if the intent is to make sure that someone doesn't enrich themselves by virtue of the legislation that's being considered and voted on, then how does Paul Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi's husband, making those very same kinds of deals not enrich her? The answer is those deals do enrich her. Just again, my opinion. My opinion. But in the first hour of this broadcast, I brought up, actually, it was the second hour of this broadcast, I brought up the fact that people making a good living run for Congress and emerge 2, 4, 6 years later, millionaires. I don't think that's what they're up there for. Nancy Pelosi's spokesman, Drew Hamill, went on to say this. Regarding proposals to ban trading by members of Congress, there are at least 3 proposals introduced in the House in this regard, and the Speaker has asked the Committee on House Administration to review these proposals. And by the way, he then asked Fox News, this is the copy that we're using today, to check with the committee, that committee who is supposed to look at all these things, the Committee on House Administration. You should check with them on their latest decision-making. Yeah. He went on to say this. The Speaker believes that sunlight is the best disinfectant. The Speaker has asked the Committee on House Administration Chair Zoe Lofgren, who is also a California Democrat, to examine the issue of members' unacceptable noncompliance with the reporting requirements of the Stock Act, including the possibility of stiffening penalties. To be clear, insider trading is already a serious federal criminal and civil violation, and the Speaker strongly supports robust enforcement of relevant statutes by the Department of Justice and the Securities and Exchange Commission. The Speaker led the House in passing the Bipartisan Courthouse Ethics and Transparency Act, which would subject federal judges to similar disclosure requirements as those in the Stock Act. President Biden signed this bill into law in May. Once again, this is not an issue of Nancy Pelosi making all these deals. This is an issue of her husband making all these deals. This also points to another real problem, that the families of people in high elected office are profiting mightily from their association with their family member in that office. My dad used to work for the RCA service company. At the time, RCA owned NBC, the television network. For that reason, not only did employees of RCA service company or NBC, the network, none of their employees or their families could take part in anything like a game show on NBC to enrich themselves. This is not new. This kind of obstruction to people profiting from insider trading has, just as this article says, has long been a part of American law. The idea that your family members, however, can profit from their association with you somehow has slipped through the cracks. Something tells me that that's on purpose. And the spokesperson, Drew Hamill, points out there have been 3 different bills that have been proposed and so on and so forth. And Nancy Pelosi said, by gosh, the committee on the committee that we're talking about here, the committee on Zoe Lofgren's committee, let me get it for you. Yes. The and I had it, and then the Committee on House Administration should review those proposals, and if you have any questions, you should ask them. Yeah. Paul Pelosi made purchases of between 1 million and 5 million shares of NVIDIA, which is a semiconductor company, according to a disclosure made by Pelosi's office, Nancy Pelosi's office. He exercised 200 call options or 20,000 shares, according to the disclosure. Reuters reported the Senate could vote on a bill that contains billions of dollars in subsidies within the semiconductor industry. Some of that is going to go to NVIDIA. Why is that? It's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, semiconductor manufacturing companies in the United States. The bill could send as much as $52 billion in chip subsidies as well as tax credits in order to increase competitiveness with China. Congress is aiming to pass the bill and send it to President Joe Biden's desk before leaving on the August recess. Speaking to Fox and Friends First, Representative James Comer of Kentucky, he's a Republican, slammed Paul Pelosi following his multi-million-dollar purchase of computer chip stock prior to the congressional subsidy vote. Comer called Nancy Pelosi the ultimate insider, noting how her husband has made other controversial stock purchases before, namely ahead of the big tech hearings on Capitol Hill. He says this, quote, Nancy Pelosi is the ultimate insider. Not only is her husband buying stock options on a much higher level than the average member of Congress, the average member of Congress may buy $5,000 or $6,000 worth of stock. He's buying $500,000 worth of stock. He's buying stock options which expires. To be able to trade stock options profitably, you have to know exactly what direction that stock's going to move, and you can make a huge profit. This is wrong. This is another example of the media turning a blind eye to Nancy Pelosi's bad behavior and unethical behavior. This is a circumstance that is inexcusable. Now, remember something. The Trump family had been sundered over supposed deal making while President Trump was in office. They're under investigation now. Right this very minute. How about Nancy Pelosi and Paul Pelosi? Where are those investigations? Nowhere to be seen. Why? Because they're not Republicans. That's why. So once again, this hypocrisy, this double standard, this willingness for the mainstream media to ignore all of this is one of the reasons why their approval rating is down to 11%. 11% of the people of the United States think that the mainstream media is doing something worthwhile. Now, I'm not going to descend in talking about how Nancy Pelosi might be a crook. As you note, I have stayed away from the Hunter Biden, Joe Biden mess that's currently going on regarding Hunter Biden's business dealings. There's a reason for that. It's not my job to investigate it. It's my job to inform you of what's going on. So I stay away from these things, typically. But I want you to understand something. This is illegal. This does expose the Speaker of the House to at least the appearance of an ethical violation. And it's got to stop, in my view. This is the Wells Report. You are listening to the Wells Report. I am John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. While we're on this reporting of Democrats who say one thing and do another, Representative Cori Bush, a proud member of the squad who has been calling to defund police from one end of the country to the other, has just spent nearly $400,000 of her campaign funds on private security services. The Missouri Democrats campaign dropped $89,265.67 into private security details throughout the second quarter. This according to the Federal Election Commission. The newest security payments were $50,000 more than her campaign's second largest expenditure for fundraising services between April 1st and June 30th. Peace Security, whose Facebook page is littered with anti-gun control posts, was the biggest recipient of Bush's security cash, Cori Bush's security cash, hauling in nearly $60,000 from her campaign. The remaining money went to Courtney Meritz and Nathaniel Davis. Apparently, they have a security company who has the exact same address as Cori Bush's campaign headquarters. Representative Bush has now directed $393,417.67 into private security for the 2022 election cycle as she refuses to tamp down calls to defend law enforcement. Democrats fear that will be used against them. Yes, it will. I always tell fellow Democrats, if y'all had this fixed before I got here, I wouldn't have to say these things, according to the squad member. She was talking to Axios. Bush said the defund the police slogan isn't the problem and blamed Democrats for not delivering on promises. Fox News Digital first reported on Bush's security payments July of 2021, which prompted CBS News to ask questions about the cash and whether it was hypocritical to hire security while pushing to strip law enforcement of their budgets. She then famously responded, "They would rather I die? You would rather me die? Is that what you want to see? You want to see me die? You know, because that could be the alternative." I'm going to do a little internet search. Cori Bush vote on Supreme Court Justice protection. You know, I think she voted against it. Yeah. Yep. Listen to this. She was just talking about they would rather I die. I've got to have private security. They'd rather I die. Do you want to see me die? One day after the House gave final approval to legislation that would allow around-the-clock security for families of Supreme Court justices, a federal grand jury indicted a California man who was arrested near Justice Brett Kavanaugh's home and threatened to kill him. The Senate voted to expand security protections shortly after the leak of a draft court opinion on Roe v. Wade, and sharply curtail abortion rights in roughly half the states. 27 Democrats, including U.S. Representative Cori Bush of Missouri, voted against the bill. The Supreme Court already has a police force charged with protecting our justices. What Congress ought to be prioritizing at this moment is legislating to defend those who are being attacked and harassed at abortion clinics around the country, or to codify Roe in this far-right Supreme Court if the far-right Supreme Court doesn't roll back constitutionally protected rights, etc., etc. She voted no. So she spends $400,000 or close to it on private security, but doesn't vote to protect Supreme Court justices. Would she rather they die? I mean, does she want to see them die? You know what? I think they just might. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in a moment. Thanks for being with us today. This is the Wells Report. I am John David Wells. Thanks very much for joining us. Oh, did I mention I had a granddaughter today? I didn't. Mitchell, my third son, and his wife Brittany gave us Josie Ray Wells earlier this morning. She was perking yesterday. We were all very excited. We knew that we were going to get Josie, and so I sent the Steely Dan song to my son. And the name of the song is Josie. So I can hardly wait to meet her. Did I mention I had another grandchild? It's 3. I should have. So politics, and this is something I've been chided for reporting on, but try not to. If you do news, then you're stuck with it. So the Democrats have a problem. The Democrat Party allowed progressives to be a part of their party. Now, there's another name for progressives because the word socialists just doesn't work in the United States context, thankfully. So they call themselves progressives, but make no mistake, they are totalitarian socialists. And you've seen their work. That you pay so much for gasoline, that you pay so much for groceries. And by the way, the inflation number is going to get into double digits soon because it can't not get into double digits because of the fuel costs. So when you look at all of this, you find yourself in a position where the Democrat Party, because they're following this leftist progressivism, because the people actually running the Biden administration are all progressive leftists. They're all totalitarian socialists. They're doing this on purpose. They attacked the one thing that would have the quickest effect, and they jumped all over it at the beginning of the Biden administration. And then they made it worse by paying everybody to stay home during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, they're running into real Democrats. There are a few. Henry Cuellar is a real Democrat. Kirsten Sinema of Arizona is a real Democrat. By the way, Henry Cuellar is from Texas. And then there's Joe Manchin. And so now we find ourselves in a situation where Joe Manchin is the enemy. And he is for this progressive, socialist, totalitarian agenda. The objective of all of this is to make things hard to get so that the Democrats can then rush in and save everybody, except they're not going to be able to save everybody because they're going to lose in this next election and things are going to change dramatically. Will they be smart enough to back off? Probably not. Because as I pointed out on this broadcast many times, what I pointed out on this broadcast is that when progressives find themselves in a position where people start holding them accountable for their delirium, they double down. They don't have any choice. They're going to have to double down. Then the fascism of the mainstream media jumps into effect. Anybody who says, no, that wasn't right, are immediately branded as insane, crazy people, that they are foisting an end to our democracy, which is not democracy, it's democracy, which is different. And they're not learning from their mistakes. Former Democrat Labor Secretary Robert Reich, who's kind of a nut, just my opinion, says it may be time for Democrats to kick Senator Joe Manchin, the Democrat from West Virginia, out of the party because they've, quote, already lost control over the Senate, unquote. You know the part where I'm saying these are totalitarian socialist communists? They've already lost control of the Senate, says Robert Reich. Yeah, they haven't lost control of the Senate. What they've done is they have been reminded that they don't control everybody in the Democrat caucus. And Joe Manchin is a guy who's going to stand up and say, no, not on my watch. Sorry. You're not going to get rid of petrochemicals. You're not going to get rid of petroleum. You're not going to get rid of coal. You're not going to get rid of natural gas on my watch. You're just not. He's in a position to do so, and he's doing so. And Robert Reich, who is a full-on leftist, progressive, socialist, anti-American totalitarian, is now saying that, well, Joe Manchin needs to be out of the party. Here's the problem. Mr. Reich, and this is why I said he was kind of a nut. Mr. Reich, you're not going to get rid of Joe Manchin by kicking him out of the party, because he would still be in the Senate of the United States. Maybe as an independent. By the way, they did this with Joseph Lieberman, who was another real Democrat. They did this to him. He ran as an independent, as a write-in vote, as I recall, in Connecticut, and was elected again. That's the same thing that would happen to Joe Manchin. Reich served as Secretary of Labor under President Clinton, was a member of President Obama's Economic Transition Advisory Board. He wrote on Substack that kicking Manchin out of the party would at least allow Democrats to admit they truly didn't have control when Americans head off to vote in the looming midterm elections. See, there's that word again, that control thing. You simply have to control the Senate. No, if we're going to do this Green New Deal, if we're going to do all this leftist, progressive, socialist, anti-American agenda, we got to get rid of people standing in the way, and Joe Manchin is the guy. Right. Manchin's office reportedly told Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer last Thursday that he's only willing to support a reconciliation bill in August that includes a provision to lower prescription drug prices and a 2-year extension of the subsidies for the Affordable Care Act. Just what we need. More government control of healthcare in the United States. They did such a great job with COVID-19. Wrong answer. This, according to a Democrat briefed on the conversations. Manchin pushed back later, saying that he had ruled out including tax hikes and climate change subsidies within the Democrat party line spending bill, saying he would wait until July inflation numbers are out next month to decide. I suspect that unless those numbers are cooked, we're going to see something close to, if not actually achieve, double-digit inflation. Reich had already seemingly admitted defeat, declaring Manchin put a final spear through the heart of what remained of President Biden and the Democrat domestic agenda, Freudian slip, particularly because he, quote, also rejected any tax increases on big corporations or the wealthy until inflation is no longer an issue. This is rich in every sense of the word. Raising taxes on big American corporations and the wealthy would not fuel inflation. It would slow inflation by reducing demand. It would also reduce investment. It would slow the economy down and do it in a way that would not hurt lower income Americans. Unfortunately, that particular horse is out of the corral. It's too late to close the door. Those horses are going to run, and they're going to run for a while. Lower income Americans are already being hurt by these policies. Manchin's state is one of the poorest in America, but Manchin doesn't seem to give a cluck. After all, the Democrat agenda, which Manchin just obliterated, included pre-K kindergarten, pre-K education, free community college, child subsidies, Medicare dental and vision benefits, paid family leave, elder care, and much else, all of enormous value to West Virginia, at the cost of destroying the state's economy, which is something that Joe Manchin is not going to allow. Reich wrote that Manchin has, quote, not championed anything else Democrats have sought. Few, if any, American-based global corporation or billionaires reside in West Virginia, but lots of money flows to Manchin from those corporations and billionaires residing elsewhere. Manchin has not only taken more campaign contributions from oil, gas, and coal companies than any other senator. as well as dividends from his own coal company. He has one of the largest war chests from all big American corporations. I'm sorry. Your envy is showing, Robert. If the Democrat Party had any capacity to discipline its lawmakers or hold them accountable, if pigs could fly, it would at least revoke Manchin's chairmanship of the Senate Committee on Energy and Natural Resources. To continue to allow this key position to be occupied by a man who has single-handedly blocked one of the last opportunities to save the earth is an insult to the universe. See how the hyperbole is getting to the point now where it insults the actual universe? Really, Robert Reich? See, when men get older, except for me, they get a little crazy. And Robert Reich is there. Yeah. I'm told that Democrats don't dare take this step for fear that Manchin would leave the Democrat Party and switch his allegiance to the Republicans. I doubt it. He'd probably be an independent. Reich then bluntly asked, why exactly would this be so terrible? He claims that Manchin already acts like a Republican and dismissed concerns that Democrats would lose control of the Senate if Manchin switched sides. I have news for Democrats. They already lost control over the Senate. In fact, the way things are right now, Biden and the Democrats have the worst of both worlds. They look like they control the Senate as well as the House and the presidency, but can't get a damn thing done because Manchin and his intermittent sidekick Arizona's Kirsten Sinema won't let them. Reich believes that, quote, Democrats have accomplished almost nothing of what they came to Washington to do in nearly 2 years, and recent failures will cost them in the upcoming midterms. You see, this is where I was talking about how the leftist, progressive, socialist, anti-American thugs running the Biden administration would then roll President Biden under the bus. Now Robert Reich is already trying to angle for some sort of an explanation as to why they're going to lose their butts in 2022. Yeah, he's saying that because the Democrats couldn't control everybody in their caucus, that means leftist, progressive, socialist, anti-American control of the Democrat Party, they haven't gotten anything done. And because of that, they're going to lose. Not the case. Not the case. In the United States of America, had this leftist delirium actually taken hold, they'd probably have maybe 2 or maybe 4 years of destroying the country before people threw them all out, every single last one of them. Democrats have to go back to voters and say, we promised a lot, we delivered squat, so please vote for us again. This does not strike me as a compelling message. How about this one? Yeah, we raised your taxes by essentially setting fire to the American economy through inflation. That's why you're spending so much money on gasoline. That's why you're spending so much money on groceries and anything else that has to move thanks to natural fuels, which people say are actually fossil fuels. By kicking Manchin out of the party, Democrats could at least go into the midterms with a more realistic pitch. It looked like we had control of the Senate, but we didn't. Now you know who the real Democrats are. Give us the power and we will get it done. Maybe this way they'll pick up more real Democrat senators. They aren't real Democrats. They're leftist, progressive, socialist, totalitarian, communists. They're anti-American. They're anti the Bill of Rights. They're anti everything that made America the great country that it is. And the proof is in your grocery bill. You see, by raising prices for everyone across the board through inflation, the government raised your taxes without having to say that they raised your taxes, because every transaction is taxed by the government, is it not? And therefore, pieces of that action then go to the government. It's a tax hike, perhaps the biggest in history. You see, Robert Reich was on President Obama's economic advisory team. Seriously? He is a leftist, progressive, socialist, anti-American. That's it. I happen to have a solution for all of this. Robert Reich is asking for the wrong people to leave the Democrat Party. Who should leave the Democrat Party? I think you probably know the answer to that, but I'm going to tell you anyway next. This is the Wells Report. I am John David Wells. Thanks very much for being a part of our show. You can do so quickly by joining us on chat. You can join us by calling me on the telephone, 817-379-2172. By all means, get after it. And if you disagree, tell me why I'm wrong. Back with more in a moment. This is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. Did I mention I just received another grandchild, a granddaughter this time? Did I mention that? I think I did, yeah. So, Robert Reich, who is another of the loose cannon leftist, progressive, socialist, anti-American fascists, who believes that the Democrat Party should have absolute control over all their members that happen to be elected by us. So in other words, progressive socialist control of the Democrat Party is asking that the Democrat Party get rid of Joe Manchin. If you're going to kick anybody out of the Democrat Party, you really need to, he says, by the way, that we know who the real Democrats are. No, we know who the real totalitarian progressive communists are in the Democrat Party. That's who should be kicked out of the Democrat Party. There are 27 progressive House representatives. They should be invited to leave the Democrat Party. You could probably count on some of their votes. Same thing in the Senate. They should send Bernie Sanders packing. Bernie, you love socialism so much. Actually be a socialist. Actually stand up as a socialist and stop hiding behind the Democrat Party. Same thing with the squad. Stop hiding behind the Democrat Party. Get out there and be proud socialists instead of trying to have your cake and eat it too. That's what should happen. Reich is asking for the wrong people to leave the party. He should leave too. I am sure that he could be a very fine vice presidential candidate on the American Socialist Party ticket. So do it. If you want to fight for a socialist America, then get out there and actually fight. By all means. Speaking of fighting, former Vice President Mike Pence is at odds again with his former boss. Today, Pence endorsed real estate developer and Arizona Board of Regents member Karen Taylor Robson in next month's GOP gubernatorial primary in the race to succeed term-limited GOP Governor Doug Ducey. The former vice president called Taylor Robson the best choice for Arizona's future and emphasized in his statement, quote, as Arizona Democrats pursue the reckless Biden-Harris agenda, Karen Taylor Robson is the only candidate for governor that will keep Arizona's border secure and streets safe, empower parents, and create great schools and promote conservative values. Taylor Robson, by the way, is one of two polling frontrunners in the Republican primary in a field of 4 candidates, along with former TV news anchor Kari Lake, who for months has been supported by President Trump. So there are 2 candidates, Taylor Robson and Kari Lake. Taylor Robson is being supported by Mike Pence. Kari Lake is being supported by President Donald Trump. The winner of the Republican primary will likely face off with Arizona Secretary of State Katie Hobbs, who's the leading contender for the Democrat gubernatorial nomination in the one-time red state that's become a top general election battleground between the 2 parties. While Taylor Robson and Lake mostly agree on many of the top issues in the Arizona primary battle, such as illegal immigration and border security, the economy, and water conservation, while both have issues with President Trump's 2020 election loss to President Biden, Lake heavily supports the former president's unproven claims, this according to Fox News, unproven claims that the 2020 presidential contest was rigged and stolen. Taylor Robson, highlighting the Pence endorsement, said he's been a warrior for the sanctity of life, limited government, law and order, opportunity for all, and the knowledge that our freedoms are granted by God. I'm proud to have him on my team. She also emphasized the former vice president has never wavered in his conservative beliefs and commitment to the Constitution and left a rock-solid legacy as governor to which I will aspire. Both Pence and Trump will be in Arizona on Friday of this week to campaign with their respective candidates they're backing, and will likely lead to split-screen images of former running mates who may end up facing off each other in the 2024 GOP presidential nomination race. Trump will be headlining a rally in Prescott Valley, Arizona. That's about 20 miles, make that 90 miles north of Phoenix. For Lake, as well as 3 other GOP candidates the former president has endorsed. Venture capitalist Blake Masters for the Senate, and Abe Hamadeh for Arizona Attorney General. Also, State Representative Mark Fincham for Arizona Secretary of State. Pence will be teaming up with Robson Taylor for 2 events, one in Phoenix and one in a border security event near Tucson. This is Pence's second high-profile split with President Trump in the Republican primaries in the past 2 months. The former vice president endorsed Republican Georgia Governor Brian Kemp and campaigned with the conservative governor outside Atlanta on the eve of the May 24th primary. Kemp crushed Trump-backed former Senator David Perdue. Trump had repeatedly targeted Kemp ever since the governor certified the 2020 election results in Georgia, where Biden narrowly edged Trump in a key battleground state. Trump has reportedly slammed Ducey for a year and a half after the Arizona governor certified Biden's razor-thin victory in the southwestern battleground state. And so, former running mates running against each other, a proxy battle in Arizona. How will that turn out? You will find out right here on the Wells Report. Thanks very much for being with us today. I hope you've enjoyed these podcasts. Make sure you share them with other people, and I will see you again tomorrow. All right. Thanks very much, wonderful people. I certainly hope you enjoyed that show. The first hour is a little rough, but that's what happens sometimes. God bless all y'all, and I will see you again tomorrow, okay? Which camera am I kissing?